In Northern Nevada, we're blessed with some of the finest automotive businesses in our nation, and our next guest is one of the finest examples of that. They specialize, however, in the truck segment, gas, diesel, whatever you drive. This is the shop we endorse as the finest truck service center in our Northern Nevada region. And here to talk trucks with us today, we welcome Mike Robbins with Dynamic Diesel Incorporated. Mike, welcome to our show today.
Thanks, Mitch.
Now, Mike and I were talking last week about trucks, and some of the things that many shops will do is allow things to go wrong with your vehicle because they get paid to fix them. And there are some very preventable items that, serviced properly, you could prevent yourself from suffering major repair expenses. And Mike's going to share some of that knowledge and experience around the 6-liter Ford diesel engine specifically, but this applies to just about any gas or diesel truck, so pay close attention. Mike, thank you again for being here today. Tell us a little bit about that 6-liter motor and some of the issues that can happen if they're not just regularly serviced.
Thanks, Mitch. I'd be glad to. With the Ford 6-liters, I'm sure there's a ton of customers out there that would be happy to say, I've had nothing but problems with this truck, and they do have their commonplace problems, just like any other vehicle. The 6-liter Ford suffers from many things that can go wrong, and I'm going to list them, and I'm sure customers will have heard or had this problem with their truck. Turbochargers that stick and need replacement, EGR valve coolers that start leaking coolant and making it smoke and need massive replacement, leading to a lot of dollars. Engine oil coolers doing the same thing. Everything from just a simple oil leaks all the way to major cooling system repairs or engine repairs, head gasket failures, things of that nature. A lot of these things can be slowed, if not prevented, with just common maintenance.
Well, and you were sharing that with me, and I think this is the part that there's going to be some people right now that are going to say, oh my God, I've had that repair. That cost me a lot of money. And they're going to be appalled when they find out that just some scheduled service could have, like you said, either prolonged or completely prevented the need for these catastrophic repairs. I mean, we're talking some of these upwards of thousands of dollars. So
very expensive, yes.
Let's talk about the problems with like the EGR coolers and the turbochargers on these and how they can be prevented with scheduled maintenance.
Okay, well, it starts from a simple thing as, we'll start with fuel filters. Fuel filters are something that a lot of people forget about. Most people don't realize that their Ford diesel has 2 of them. There's one at the engine and one on the frame rail. A lot of shops will miss the one on the frame rail. When the fuel filters get clogged up, the fuel quality starts making it through. That's not quite desirable. And it can cause problems with injectors. It can cause all kinds of issues, including smoke and soot. And that soot has got to go somewhere. It ends up in your EGR cooler. It ends up in your turbocharger. These turbochargers are a very fine, small parts working machine. And when things start to get coked with carbon and whatnot, they clog up, and it will dictate a major repair to replace that. That will also lead to, coking up of the EGR cooler. The EGR cooler works in a fine balance with the engine and the EGR valve and the oil cooler to keep things clean as possible emissions-wise. And when the oil service is extended farther than, say, 5,000-mile intervals, which we recommend no further than 5,000 miles. Because
and the manufacturers will sometimes say 7 to 10 on some of these vehicles.
Well, and keep in mind, Mitch, that, in this conversation, we're talking coolant, we're talking oil. All of these things are things that the manufacturers want to make as long a service interval as possible to make the cost out of your pocket on their vehicle as minimal as possible. That's how they make you happy to buy their vehicle, because my cost of maintenance is low. Well, the problem is that after a certain amount of mileage, that cost of maintenance is going to skyrocket if the proper maintenances aren't done when they should be, as at the intervals. Oil changes in this area. In the perfect world of perfectly flat ground, ambient temp that stays at one steady temperature, engine oil, yes, can go 7,500 to 10,000 miles.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because our climate, the freezing and the boiling summers, is far more degrading on some of these fluids and oils than other climates. And then the dust particles as well.
Exactly. The dust in our air is, even when you don't see it, it's there. It's plugging up your filters, and it makes them look like sandboxes as far as your air filters. The engine oil, the uphills, the downhills, we're blessed with the mountains, and we've got valleys, and we've got all of those things, the high temps, the low temps. All of those things play a part in degrading the fuels and the liquids in your vehicle.
And a lot of our consumers will tow horse trailers or RVs or toy
Which
haulers.
just accelerates the problem even faster.
Climbing these mountainous roads increases operating temperatures and degrades these fluids as well.
Exactly. And so we recommend that you don't go any further than 5,000 miles on your oil change. And those oil changes, those keep the particulate and the soot out of your engine and out of things like your engine oil cooler that will clog up. And when it clogs up, it gets too hot. The oil doesn't cool like it should, which in turn translates to the coolant. The coolant then doesn't do the proper job of cooling your engine. So now things are running hot, everything from just minor failures all the way to major failures. And the cooling system is one that's it's a very common misunderstanding and overlooked thing for customers. It's not just antifreeze; it's coolant as well. That liquid, that coolant, its job is to keep the engine cool as well as to keep it from freezing. It is correct to have the right amount of mixture in there to keep the freeze point there in the wintertime. You want to make sure your coolant is at a good level so that you don't freeze in the winter. But it's just as important in the summer. If the mixture isn't correct, the boil over protection isn't there. And in these Ford 6 liters, they have a very common problem with the radiator cap. Something as simple as a radiator cap goes bad. They're designed to put a certain amount of pressure in your cooling system so that the boiling point is higher. If that cap goes bad, the boiling point becomes lower, so your truck is going to be more prone to overheating. It's also going to reduce the circulation of the coolant, which in turn reduces its ability to cool the engine, causing things like the EGR cooler to fail, the oil cooler to fail, because things get hot and then they start to leak. Eventually, they're going to fail.
Well, and you talked about if the EGR cooler fails, that some of this will back up into the turbo.
Absolutely. When the EGR cooler fails, the most common failure for the EGR cooler is for it to start leaking coolant. When it does that, this is a completely closed-off system, so it has no place to go. So when the EGR valve is open, it's actually sucking that coolant into your engine and you're burning it, which is not good, to say the least, for the internal components of the engine.
Well, and somebody might think they just see a little steam coming out of their tailpipe. That would be one of the first signs of this, right?
Yes, it would. If you see steam coming out of the tailpipe and it's not on first startup, then chances are you've got a problem. And it's something you might want to get looked at. It's normal to see steam in the morning, in a cold morning. You've got hot exhaust and cold air. It's normal. But if you see steam coming out of your tailpipe on a 70-degree morning, there's a chance you might have a little bit too much moisture in that exhaust, and it might be something to look at, especially if it continues for more than a minute or two. But, when the EGR's cooler is closed on that same scenario, that coolant has no place to go but up through the exhaust. In a turbocharged vehicle, that leads right to the turbo. These turbos, once again, are a fine-oiled machine. If they get foreign substances in them, they don't
corrosion.
Like it. They start to accelerate in the corrosion because of the heat involved with the turbocharger. Things rust, things stick, and now you're looking at a turbocharger and EGR coolers, and that's a very common repair that we get with these Fords. And it's sad, but it's very true to say that with just some maintenance, it can be prevented.
Like I said, there's a bunch of people right now, I'm sure, listening, going, "I've replaced both of those," and now tell them how easy, how avoidable it was. All they had to do was,
well, it is simple. It's change your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. The heavier you use your vehicle, the shorter the interval. The bigger the trailer, the shorter the interval. The coolant, I know all the manufacturers say that they're a long life coolant. And while they are, yes, a long-life coolant, they don't degrade as fast as the older coolants of yesteryear did. They still degrade. And in this climate, as we discussed before, towing your trailers with high ambient temps, low cold temps, things being towed, and the vicious cycle of heating and cooling that coolant has to go through, it's relatively, if you compare it to the cost of turbochargers and EGR coolers or head gasket failures, things of that nature, it's a really cheap fix to just come in and say, hey guys, could you flush my coolant system? We're talking, 3 to 4 gallons of coolant and most likely a radiator cap. That's another big one to change on those trucks.
Well, even not just Ford owners, every diesel or gas truck owner should be doing this, because these are problems that go into, like you said, just heating up your engine to a higher temperature because your coolant isn't cooling to the proper temperature. Can cause head gaskets, warping of heads, major catastrophic engine failure.
Absolutely.
Ultimately.
And usually the people don't notice a cooling system problem until they have, either in the wintertime, my heater doesn't blow quite as hot as it used to, or in the summer they start to notice it's getting a little hotter than it used to. Those are all signs of a cooling system problem. And it's not just a leak that can cause issues. It's things like those that are indicators, hey, it's time to do something with my coolant.
Well, and what we want our community to understand is there's shops that are committed to educating them, giving them the knowledge and the power to make quality choices, to save themselves the aggravation and expenses of major avoidable, and this is the preventable repairs that you're talking about. And I thought it was interesting. We had a conversation even this morning about the fact that your shop would rather see them doing regularly scheduled maintenance for the rest of their life than to have to do their major repairs, because your customers, when you save them money, they're loyal forever. They send their friends and family to you. You do better taking care of them on a regularly scheduled maintenance on a long haul than doing these catastrophic major repairs, even though you get paid to do them. So if you're not getting this level of knowledge and information, and if you're not getting these conversations at the shop you're taking your truck to now, this is why we exist as an enterprise. There are shops that really care, that deserve your support, that will take care of you. And again, if you're not having these conversations with your current shop, visit Dynamic Diesel. Mike, how do they get a hold of you?
We are at 220 Coney Island.
359-4477. 359-4477.
You can call and speak with James. He's a very, very knowledgeable shop foreman. Or Kevin, the owner. Melinda is also available. And I'm available, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If you have any questions, please come visit us. We'd be happy to show you around.
And that's Mike Robbins with Dynamic Diesel Incorporated of Sparks, Nevada. And thanks again for being here with us and helping us fulfill on our commitment, educating consumers, one car buyer and truck buyer at a time.